Good morning, everyone. I'll get right into our operational update for today. Yesterday, U.S. military forces conducted an over-the-horizon counterterrorism operation against an ISIS-K planner and facilitator. The airstrike occurred in the Nangarhar province of Afghanistan. I can confirm, as more information has come in, that 2 high-profile ISIS targets were killed and 1 was wounded. And we know of 0 civilian casualties. Without specifying any future plans, I will say that we will continue to have the ability to defend ourselves and to leverage over-the-horizon capability to conduct counter-terrorism operations as needed. We continue to evacuate American citizens and vulnerable Afghans out of Kabul. In fact, there are approximately 1,400 individuals at the Kabul airport who have been screened and manifested for flights today. As I said yesterday, we have the ability to include evacuees on military airlift out of Afghanistan until the very end. This is a massive military, diplomatic, security, and humanitarian undertaking for the United States and our allies. And so I'll give you a specific update of the last 24. Yesterday, 32 U.S. military aircraft, 27 C-17s, and 5 C-130s departed with approximately 4,000 personnel. Combined with 34 coalition aircraft departures, an additional 2,800 personnel left Kabul for various intermediate staging bases. 66 flights left out of Kabul yesterday in that 24-hour period with 6,800 evacuees. Today I can report an updated total evacuation that is more than 117,000, the vast majority of which are Afghans. Of this total number, approximately 5,400 are American citizens. This is an incredible number of people who are now safer thanks to the heroism of the young men and women who are putting their lives on the line each day to evacuate American and vulnerable Afghans out of Kabul. Threats to our forces and to this operation remain real and significant. I'm sure you can appreciate that. And now as the military mission begins to end in Kabul, thousands of service members are working across the globe and within the United States to complete this incredibly important mission. Out of the EUCOM AOR, 6 flights will transport about 2,000 Afghans to the United States. Since August 20th, the EUCOM AOR has received nearly 30,000 vulnerable Afghans and evacuees. A good example of how we're building out capacity as we execute this incredibly important mission, a flight from Italy will fly to Philadelphia International Airport, the second U.S. onward location to receive flights. As NORTHCOM Commander General Van Herk said in his brief yesterday, our total capacity across multiple U.S. installations is approximately 21,000 and growing. We're steadily working to increase the capacity to 50,000 by September 15th. Right now, we are hosting approximately 8,000 Afghan applicants at Fort McCoy, Fort Bliss, Fort Lee, and Joint Base McGuire-Dix Lakehurst. A dedicated team of military, civilian, and contract personnel are working closely with numerous agencies, both government and non-government, to ensure further requirements and additional capabilities are available. We will keep you updated on this effort. SOUTHCOM continues to conduct humanitarian relief operations in Haiti, and NORTHCOM, while simultaneously executing evacuation flights, is postured to support FEMA as a lead federal agency in preparing for Tropical Storm Ida. Lastly, I want to share that the Department of Defense will shortly announce the names of the 13 service members who were killed in service to their country. We grieve with the Gold Star families, friends, and loved ones of our fallen. They will be remembered and revered among Americans who have served in Afghanistan in Operations Freedom Sentinel and Enduring Freedom.
Okay, I don't have anything to add, so we'll go right to questions, Bob.
Thank you, John.
A couple questions on the strike last night in Afghanistan. General Taylor just said that 2 high-profile targets were killed and 1 wounded. The initial announcements, I think, said 1.
Yep.
This was all the same strike? Was it a single strike? And can you explain any more about whether these individuals were directly involved in the Thursday bombing at Kabul airport?
So it was, without getting into too much tactical detail in terms of munitions used, I would tell you it was a single mission. And to get these targets, and as the assessments and information flowed over time, we were able to recognize that another was killed as well, and 1 wounded. So, I mean, battle damage assessment, as you know, sometimes takes time. Information comes in. As we have more clarity, we wanted to be transparent about that.
But the planner facilitator description, does that mean they were involved directly in the Kabul airport attack?
They were ISIS-K planners and facilitators, and that's enough reason they're alone. I won't speak to the details of these individuals or what their specific roles might be, but as the general said, we have the ability and the means to carry out over-the-horizon counterterrorism capabilities, and we're going to defend ourselves. And I think I just leave it at that.
Thank you. I'd like to ask you another question about the airport situation at the moment.
Yeah.
Is it true that only U.S. passport holders are being allowed onto the airport now through the gates?
Any U.S. passport holder that wants to get in can get in, and we are still, if I'm wrong here, I don't think I'm wrong. Well, we are still processing and getting on planes SIV applicants as well as vulnerable Afghans.
So they're being allowed onto the airport?
As far as I know, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think that's changed.
Thanks.
Idris?
Hey, John, so can you give us the names of the 2 individuals killed in this strike?
No, we're not going to release the names.
Because,
We're just not going to release the names.
and if I can just go back to Thursday's suicide bombing, there appear to be images and reports from the ground that some of the Afghan civilians killed may have been shot by the Marines at the gate. At this point in time, since we're 48 hours, do you have any evidence that the Marines or any of the U.S. troops may have shot injured or wounded?
We don't. We can't confirm that, and we certainly are not in a position to deny it either. We are investigating this, and as we get more information that we can reliably communicate to you about this incident, we will. Yeah, Tara.
The State Department issued another dire warning saying don't approach the gates. Did this airstrike have anything to do with that potential for future attack? Can you talk about what capabilities ISIS might have lost in this drone strike?
Well, a couple of things. I'll let the State Department speak for the advisory they sent out. That is not uncommon for them to do that, particularly in a country like Afghanistan, and they're constantly watching the threat environment, as are we, and they're doing a prudent, responsible thing to inform Americans there in Kabul about what's best for their own safety. But again, I think I'll let the State Department speak to the rationale there. Obviously, again, they're doing what they believe they need to do to keep people safe. I am not going to talk about specific capabilities ISIS may have lost in this strike. They lost a planner, and they lost a facilitator, and they've got 1 wounded. And the fact that 2 of these individuals are no longer walking on the face of the earth, that's a good thing. It's a good thing for the people of Afghanistan. It's a good thing for our troops and our forces at that airfield, and I think I'm just going to leave it there.
And to follow up, can you discuss the level of threat right now at the airport? We've seen a number of the allies bring their evacuation operations to a close early. Will the U.S. still stay there through the 31st?
We are going to complete this mission by the end of the month. We've said that. Nothing has changed about the timeline for us. And we will do this in as safe and an orderly way as possible. And that includes being able to continue to evacuate right up until the end.
But what about the threats at the airport? Can you describe what, are they still?
Threats are still very real. They're very dynamic. And we are monitoring them literally in real time. And as I said yesterday, we're taking all the means necessary to make sure we remain focused on that threat stream and doing what we can for force protection.
A couple of questions. First for you, John. Have U.S. troops begun retrograde withdrawal from the airport?
We have begun retrograding.
Can you say anything about the number who have left?
No, I cannot.
And then General Taylor, for you, please. The numbers of military aircraft who have left are relatively consistent with where they've been for several days, but the number of passengers on them is down from where it was. Does that mean that the U.S. is now starting to move some equipment, military equipment on those, or are there planes that are going out just not full?
As we said, our mission to continue evacuating those as required and to meet the mission requirement by August 31st is what the commanders are executing.
So does that mean that you're starting to take some equipment out on these aircraft, or does it, or do you not have enough
Yeah,
passengers that are?
there is equipment leaving on those flights that was originally planned.
And then if I could ask one more, since, have there been any attacks? General McKenzie talked about how the Taliban had thwarted some attacks before Thursday's attack. Have there been any other cases that you're aware of that the Taliban have actually stopped attackers from getting in towards the airport?
I don't have specific reports of that, other than, as you can see, as we just talked, the security of the base is the most important thing that we're doing to allow us to continue our mission.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So John, you said the threat at the airport remains active and dynamic. Is it fair to say that whether or not those people killed last night deserve to be on the face of the earth or not, that the threat at the airport remains unchanged?
I wouldn't say that it remains unchanged. I didn't say that. I said it remains active and dynamic, and it does.
Is it as serious as it was yesterday?
It is a serious threat. I'm not sure how any potential terrorist threat can be anything other than serious, or that we shouldn't take it seriously. It's serious.
Yesterday, you denied the Taliban claim that they had assumed responsibility for security at some parts of the airport. Is that still the case, that the Taliban do not provide security at the airport itself?
That is still the case.
And is that going to remain the case until the end, or at some point do they have to move into the airport to keep the crowds at bay while those last planes take off?
I'm not going to talk about the specifics as we get closer to the end. Let me just say this, as clearly as I can, we will maintain the ability to defend ourselves and our operations all the way through. Yeah, Lucas.
John, did the Taliban in any way provide any intelligence or any support with this drone strike that killed those 2 ISIS terrorists?
I'm not going to talk about intelligence matters one way or the other.
Rule it out.
I'm not going to talk about intelligence matters one way or the other.
Taliban supporting this drone strike in any way?
We had useful intelligence on our own to conduct this strike.
Do you consider the Taliban and the Haqqani network separate entities?
Lucas, I'm not going to give you a breakdown here, a characterization of the Taliban or Haqqani. Now, Lucas, you got to remember what we're focused on here, and that's on getting more people out and getting our troops out, completing this mission. And I'm not sure what benefit it does for me to try to characterize one group or another. We know that the
People that the deputy leader of the Taliban is Surjan Haqqani, who has a $10 million bounty on his head. People should know. Are these separate entities, or?
we know that there is a certain matter of commingling here. I mean, there's a marbling, if you will, of Taliban and Haqqani. What I'm pushing back a little bit on you, Lucas, is the relevance of that discussion to what we're trying to do today, which is complete an evacuation safely and to get our troops and our forces at the airport out safely. That's what we're focused on.
One more question. Every major newspaper and television news outlet has said that the U.S. military brass recommended to the president to leave 2,500 troops in Afghanistan, not pull out. Have you asked any of those outlets for a correction?
I'm sorry, say that one again.
Every major newspaper and television news outlet has reported that top Pentagon brass, from the Defense Secretary to the head of U.S. forces in the Middle East and Afghanistan, to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, recommended to the President that 2,500 U.S. troops should have stayed in Afghanistan, not been pulled out. Have you asked any news outlet for a correction to those stories?
Thanks for repeating it. We don't make it a habit to talk publicly one way or the other. Right, wrong, up, down, more or less, about the advice and counsel that Pentagon leaders give the Commander-in-Chief.
What about correcting the record?
Louis.
Has there been another helicopter evacuation recently?
No, I don't think there has been. No.
Okay. Can I follow up then on the discussion about the drone strike yesterday? It's been characterized as being retaliation, as being reprisal for the bombing at the airport. Is that accurate, or was this something that, as part of your over-the-horizon counterterrorism planning, you were already targeting?
This was a little bit of both. I mean, we have the ability to conduct over-the-horizon counterterrorism capabilities. We've talked about that. This certainly fits in that mold. But it's not coincidence that it happened just a couple of days after we lost 13 brave service members.
And can I ask
Barbara?
again, you're calling one a planner and another a facilitator. I believe that you're saying that one, that's correct, right? That's the characterization of these two individuals. What is the difference? I mean, and what makes them targeted?
Obviously, thanks for your question, but that is the clarification, planner, facilitator, that are those that would have the ability to facilitate or help plan in attacks. And that, as we said, gave us the ability and the authority we had to conduct those missions.
And were they involved in planning an imminent attack?
We're not going to go into detailed intelligence information that led to that attack or that strike or future operations.
Thank you.
Yeah, Barb.
Couple of things on the strike. First thing, you called them high profile. Could you explain to us, but not senior? So, and then I have a follow-up on the strike. What makes you say they're high profile?
Based on the intelligence collected and activities in the past, that was the classification and used for those.
General Taylor, can you just clarify, were you actually targeting both of these individuals, or were you targeting one and the other one happened to be there and got struck?
We had the intelligence that led us to the target area that allowed for that strike to happen with the BDA as briefed.
Were you targeting two individuals in this strike?
We had intelligence that allowed us to conduct that strike on those multiple individuals.
John, if I could ask you also, so now you have done this strike, what is the assessment or feeling about the impact of this strike on ISIS-K in Afghanistan? Have you degraded them in any fashion? Can you explain that if they're high profile? Have you deterred? Have you degraded? What is your conclusion about what the impact of this strike actually has been?
They have two high-profile planners, or one planner, one facilitator, that are no longer on their muster roll. So they have lost some capability to plan and to conduct missions. But Barbara, make no mistake, nobody's writing this off and saying, well, we got them, so we don't have to worry about ISIS-K anymore. Not the case. As I said earlier, the threat stream is still active, still dynamic. We're still laser focused on that and force protection. And we aren't thinking for a minute that what happened yesterday gets us in the clear. Not a minute. But do we believe that we hit valid targets? Bad guys who can do bad things and can plan bad missions? Absolutely. And do we think that that will have some impact on their ability going forward? Absolutely. What and to how much, we're just going to have to keep watching the intelligence going forward.
I don't know if you can answer, but does the United States have a sense, even if you can't say names, do you have any sense of who is in command of ISIS-K right now?
I'm not going to get into specific org charts and intelligence about what we know about the organization. Obviously, we put a lot of time and effort into learning as much as we can, and I think for security purposes, I'm just going to leave it at that. Laura.
So a couple quick questions about the attack itself. First of all, where did the unmanned aircraft come from? Was it a Reaper drone, Predator drone? Can you give us any information about the
From
aircraft?
over the horizon.
Okay, so no specific information you can
It
give
came
us?
from over the horizon.
Okay, and then there were reports that the targets were in a vehicle? Is that accurate? Or was there any other damage to ISIS infrastructure?
As I think the general said right at the top, we're going to be loath to release a lot of tactical level BDA detail here. We want to preserve as much flexibility as we can. So I think you can understand, or at least I hope you can understand, that we're just not going to be able to answer a lot of that detailed stuff right now.
And then just to follow up, what are you doing about the ISIS-K cells in Kabul itself? Because clearly these attacks are coming from Kabul. It's possible the terrorists have gone underground. Obviously, you can't target the city itself with airstrikes right now.
Yeah, what I would tell you is we're watching the threat stream very carefully, Laura. Clearly, they have the ability to operate inside Kabul. We're mindful of that. And we're watching it as closely as we can. And we're obviously trying to make sure that we have available to us as much information and context as possible so as to prepare for any future attacks. And that certainly, we have to assume, could come from or be planned out of or sourced out of places that they might have established themselves in Kabul. I think that's really as far as we're going to be able to go right now. Okay?
And if I could ask the general a couple questions about the airport. When are we officially handing the airport over to the Taliban? Is the Taliban going to be running the airport? Are they going to be running it with the Qataris and the Turks, as I believe has been reported?
We're going to continue to run the airport up until the end, and those details, as they continue to be worked out, will come forward. But right now, we will continue to run that airfield to make sure that we can execute our operations.
And are some of the gates to the airport welded shut, as has been reported?
There are gates that are closed, absolutely, right now, but as we said earlier, we do have gates that are continue to be open as we coordinate and still work with the Department of State to get people in for evacuation.
Thank you.
I have to go to the phones here.
Yes, sir.
Howard Altman.
Hey, first of all, I want to express my condolences to the families of lost loved ones in Kabul. Despite this massive effort to evacuate folks, there were a number of organizations, including current and former military, that feel there's a level of frustration in not being able to get people out, and they're working in many ways. There's been many reports about that. My question is DOD cooperating with any of these organizations? Can you talk about that? And then what is your message to these organizations? Are they helping? Are they hindering? And given what you know about how this is unfolding, should they continue their operations?
Well, it's certainly not for us to tell them to stop caring about individuals that they know that are in Afghanistan, Howard. We are, as you might imagine, we are working off many different streams of information about various vulnerable Afghan groups, not to mention applicants in the Special Immigrant Visa Program and, of course, American citizens. And I don't want to speak for the State Department, but the State Department has really been liaising with a lot of outside groups to help identify those who need to be evacuated. We are primarily responsible for helping provide that secure area at the airport for them to be able to get through the process and get through to properly manifest them and to get them on flights out of there. But look, I think a lot of us are getting emails and calls and texts from friends and colleagues. Many of them are veterans who are passing information to us to try to help get additional people out, and we're doing the best we can when we are contacted to get that information in the right stream to the right people on the ground there at the airport to continue to facilitate movement. And as the general said, we're going to try to facilitate movement of evacuees right up until the very end.
Have these efforts helped, or are they adding to the confusion? And is DOD cooperated or helped them in any way? Can you specify?
I think certainly, Howard, to the degree that they have brought to light information that we can act upon to get additional people out, of course, that's been helpful. And we certainly share the concerns that these groups have for these individuals. We feel the same obligation that they do to it. So to the degree they have been able to help us latch on and identify, then yes, that's been helpful. Gordon?
Done a few different things. One question with the Taliban, it's not an intelligence question, but was there any kind of coordination? Did you share any information prior to the strike on the ISIS targets with the Taliban? One question. I got a few more.
No.
No, easy question answered. And turning to the preparations for folks coming back, is there a total number of people you have, evacuees you have on domestic bases here, plus those kind of on the step to come back? So all the different hubs plus the bases, you have a total number there?
I don't have it with me, Gordon. I think you heard General Van Herk yesterday. We've got just under 7,000 SIV applicants at U.S. military installations across the country. He's opened up additional installations to try to get us to a capacity of maybe as much as 50,000 if we need it. I think, but he gave that number yesterday, and I think I don't think that number has changed appreciably over the last 24 hours. But before I jump off there, let me just check and see if I've got an updated number in Europe. I got it here somewhere, I think. No, I don't think I've got it across Europe. So we'll have to come back to you on that.
And then two other quick ones. Do you expect troops to come into Dover as soon as today?
What I can tell you is that the remains of the 13 individuals who were killed are on their way back to the United States, but I am not at liberty to give you a precise arrival.
Okay, final clarification. What struck in the target from last night was a planner and a facilitator, or they are both considered kind of both? I didn't quite understand.
The capabilities of those struck and killed last night were a facilitator and planners.
So
yeah, we're not going to get into this one was this one was this. A capability
kind of planners
of
and
facilitators and planners. Yeah.
Were you aware of them before?
Like I said, we're not going to discuss the intelligence that led up to, than it did with the intelligence that we had. Allowed us to conduct that strike.
But you can't say if they were even individuals who were already on the U.S. radar as high-profile people.
We had intelligence on the target set that led us as we continued to work up that to conduct that strike.
Can I ask one more on the over-the-horizon efforts? This, if I'm not mistaken, we look back and the last time that we saw that the U.S. announced a counter-terrorist strike in Afghanistan was February of 2020. Are you aware of any other particular specific, not against the Taliban, but specific CT strikes since February 2020 in Afghanistan?
I don't have that information readily available.
General, with all due respect, the reason you're getting questions about the intelligence is 2 days before Kabul fell, the intelligence did not show that the country was about to fall to the Taliban. That's why you're receiving questions about the intelligence of this target, just how serious these ISIS fighters were.
No, I understand that. And well, Dan, and I understand that people, we're not going to go into the details of the intelligence that goes into that.
Are they plotting an attack on U.S. troops at the Kabul airport in the next few days?
The intelligence that we had was good enough, it allowed us to conduct that strike. And as Mr. Kirby said, we now have 2 members of ISIS-K that are no longer able to facilitate or plan attacks.
Are they planning attacks on U.S. troops
I'm
at
not going to
Kabul?
go into that level.
John, are you expecting the Secretary and the President to greet the caskets at Dover?
I don't have any schedule announcements to make with respect to that.
John, I'm a little unclear on what I think each of you said when you were talking about the presence of the Taliban at the airport. Are you saying that there are no Taliban on the airfield beginning to transition to control on either the civilian or military
Bob,
side?
so this was some reporting yesterday that the Taliban were in control of the gates. And then there was reporting that we were shutting down all evacuation operations in the course of a day. And my point yesterday was those are not true. We're not shutting down evacuation operations. We're going to continue going to the end. We are still in charge of the airport, and we are still in charge of security at the airport. And what was true a few days ago is still true today. The Taliban have checkpoints around the airport in a loose perimeter, if you will, but they are not manning gates. They are not at the airport doing security roles or anything like that.
They're not at the airport. That's
They're
what
not
I'm
at
hearing.
the airport.
Okay.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, Idris.
Just going back to the drone strike, you obviously can't give specific names of countries, but did you notify any countries through which the drone may have had to fly through before the strike? And which committees on the Hill did you notify prior to the strike, if at all?
I don't. As far as I know, there was no notifications that did or needed to happen beforehand.
To countries or the committees?
No notifications that were needed to be done beforehand. Yes.
You're not revealing the names of these individuals, but you know them, right? And do you know the nationality of these individuals who were killed in the drone strike yesterday?
We know who they are.
You know them?
Yes,
And
we
the
know who they
third
are.
one who are wounded was planner or the facilitator?
I don't have that information.
And one more question. During your conversations with the Taliban, have they given you any assurance or indicated that they will not let Afghanistan to be used as a launching pad for terrorist attack against U.S., its friends and allies?
Can you say that one again?
During your conversation with the Taliban leadership, have they indicated or given any assurance to you that they will not let Afghanistan to be used as a launching pad for terrorist attack against U.S., its friends and allies?
They made assurances as part of the Doha Agreement about affiliation with Al Qaeda and about terrorist groups operating from Afghanistan. They've said that publicly. They said that as part of the Doha Agreement. Barb.
Do you have any indication of the level or types of foreign fighters that may have flowed into Afghanistan in recent days and weeks?
I do not.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're going to call it a day. Now we're going to call it a day, Lucas. Lucas, I appreciate it very much. I
If
appreciate
thousands
it
of
very
ISIS
much,
prisoners
Lucas.
were released in
Thank you
jail
all
by the
for coming today. I
Taliban,
appreciate it.
is that
Thank
evidence
you
that the
very
Taliban
much.
ISIS might be in